Hello to everybody. I would like to welcome you to the 2021 nanoGUNE PhD workshop that is organized in the framework of the nanoGUNE's anniversary. This year is going to be the 12th anniversary and it's going to happen tomorrow on the 30th of January. So this year we have organized a PhD workshop that is quite different. First of all, because it is an online session, and also because we have decided not to show our own work, but to choose a topic that activates our curiosity. And this topic is where do art and science meet? For this, we have invited different speakers that can give an answer to this question and will show their work regarding this topic. Also, we have organized a photo contest or image contest in which we have all nanoGUNE's members have participated, and this was to explore our own artistic abilities, and the winner will be announced later. Then I would like to thank the rest of the organizers of the workshop that are Inge, Stefan, Matthias, Franz, Nicolas. And now Ushue will explain you how to raise your hand after each speaker finishes with their presentation. So again, thank you all of you for joining us.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayara. And now we will do this quick explanation regarding questions. As Mayara has explained before, once each speaker talk is finished, we will have 10 minutes or 5 minutes stop for questions. So you have to follow 2 steps. First one is to enter on the participants section of Zoom, and then click the button raise hand like this, and we will attend you in order, and you could post your questions on live. Thank you very much. And if you have any doubt, you could always send us a message through the chat. And now Nicolas will introduce our first speaker.
Yes, welcome everyone to this nice first session of the PhD workshop from me as well. And for me, it's an absolute pleasure to introduce our opening speaker, Gustavo A. Schwartz, who is a physicist, writer, and self-described mestizante. So he's mixing actually science and art. So I couldn't think of someone better to open this workshop. He is currently working at the CFM, and he is also the founder of the Mestizajes program at the DIPC. And this program explores the boundary between art, science, literature, and humanities. I personally had the joy of collaborating with him before on his project of the photo book Creativium, which was also combined with a photo exhibition here in San Sebastian as well. And this book explored the scientific creativity. Currently, he combines his scientific research work with the directions of the Mestizajes program and the writing of essays and fiction that explore the relationship between art, science, and literature. And maybe he will tell us a little bit about this now in his talk titled Entanglements. So Gustavo, stage is yours.
Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Thank you, Nicolas, for the introduction. Thank you also to all the organizers for inviting me to participate in this art and science workshop. It is a real pleasure for me to be here and to share with you my reflections about science and art. Um, some years ago, I read an article in Nature. It was maybe 8 or 10 years ago, saying that the people who is dedicated to explore the relations between art and science typically were male scientists with an established position and with an age of 50 something, which is more or less my current profile. Um, 10 years later, I am happy to see that those statements are no longer valid and that right now there are young people not only participating in this kind of activities, but even more important, organizing them. Okay, so I would like to congratulate all of you for organizing this kind of seminars or workshops. Idea for today is to share with you some personal reflections on the relationships between art and science. I can imagine that there are many scientists in the audience. Okay, maybe most of them are physicists, and probably when they read the title, they thought that we were going to talk about quantum entanglements. Okay, this is not the case, unfortunately for them, but I think that quantum entanglements is a nice metaphor for the relationships between art and science, because you know that in quantum entanglement you cannot you have two particles which are entangled, and you cannot describe the quantum state of one of the particles without taking into account the quantum state of the other part. Okay, but I can imagine that the audience today is not only composed by physicists, and maybe there are also some poets in the audience, or at least I hope so. And maybe those poets were thinking in this small book entitled Entanglements, written by Ray Armantrout, who is a well-known poet in USA. She won the Pulitzer Prize some years ago, and she wrote this collection of poems partially inspired in particle physics. And it is also interesting to point out that she is collaborating with some physicists of our environment here in San Sebastian. Okay, but maybe some people were thinking when they saw the title of the talk in this journal from the MIT Press, from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. This is a journal also entitled Entanglements, which is at the intersection of science, technology, art, social science, and design. So as you can see, we can use the word entanglements for many different things, especially those related with literature, art, and science. And this is because from my point of view, the word entanglements and the concept behind entanglements, it's a great metaphor for understanding the relations between science and arts. I put here arts in plural, okay, because all along this talk we are going to talk. When I mention arts, I am not only talking about painting, sculpture, but also about music, literature, photography, theater, and so on. The idea that I want to translate to you along this talk is that science or sciences in plural and arts are entangled, are related to each other, okay? Uh, I am not saying that arts and sciences are the same thing, of course. In fact, they show some differences, of course, but they also present many similarities, and especially they present some useful complementarity, okay? So in the rest of the talk, we are going to talk about differences and similarities between art and science, but mainly we will focus on the complementarity between both of them. So let's start talking about differences. Maybe the most obvious differences between art and science are related with the methods and language that each of them use. So concerning to the methods, we can say that from Galileo, the way of acquiring knowledge was related with performing experiments under very well controlled conditions. On the other hand, the arts were based on a different, let's say, a different technique. They were based on unique and subjective experiences. Concerning to the language, we can say that the choice of mathematics as a language for science, and it is important to remark that it is an election, okay? We choose to use mathematics as a language for science, and this fact excludes from science all the things that cannot be expressed in mathematical language, okay? And most of these things are related to the human condition, okay? And however, non-mathematical forms of expressions, like those used in the arts, provide us with a more, let's say, complete picture of the world. Maybe it is a less precise, but it is more complete. We can say that the very adoption of empiricism and mathematical language to develop science also established the possible objects of study that this could tackle. This meant that what couldn't be tested in a controlled way, or what couldn't be expressed in mathematical language, was no concern of science. However, in the last decades, many convergences start appearing. Currently, nowadays, art is using data as a raw material, okay, not only colors, shapes, words, and so on, but also data, okay, to make artifacts. On the other hand, science is nowadays using text, paintings, and music in order to understand the human behavior, in order to understand how the mind and brain works. Concerning to the similarities, maybe the most important similarity between art and science is the attitude towards the world, towards the reality, okay, and this attitude of exploration, okay. We can say that artists reject earlier traditions of art for the very same reason that scientists also reject earlier traditions of science. Certainly, an artist could choose to paint like Rembrandt, but painting like Rembrandt is imitating, but not doing art. In the same sense, let's say a scientist could choose to perform experiments on falling bodies similar to those conducted by Galileo or by Newton, but again, understanding Newton's law is learning but not doing science, okay? So to be successful, the artist, like the scientist, must introduce into his her discipline new methods, new perceptions, or new phenomena that raise new problems to address. Another important point, or another important similarity between art and science, is a common shared aesthetic. Okay, it is important to realize that style, originality, and beauty are all concepts strongly related to individual personality, but also to a cultural context and historical period, okay? In particular, if we take a group of scientists and artists and we train them under the very same historical and cultural context, they will use the very similar aesthetic, okay? They cannot escape to that, okay? In one way or another, scientists have always relied on aesthetic criteria when analyzing their results or elaborating their theories. Not only to solve a complex problem, but also when it comes to raising new questions, there are quite a few scientists that use aesthetic rather than rational criteria, okay? On the other hand, the great artists and writers have always been very interested in the latest scientific discoveries. And this is what creates and at the same time uses a common aesthetic. Complementarity is, for me, the most interesting aspect of the art-science relationship. Okay, it is related to the reciprocal inspiration, to the creative process, and also to the way of approaching complex problems. In particular, those related to what we can call the human condition. So let's explore some of these aspects. The way in which artists and scientists discover and invent problems, experiment with ways to deal with them, and generate and test possible solutions is universal, okay? When we are talking about the creative process, there is no clear difference between arts and sciences, okay? They all work with the creative process in a very similar way. In fact, there are few persons who achieve great eminence in one field without displaying more than average ability in one or more other fields. Here you can see some of the most famous polymaths, okay? All of them, here in the first column, all of them were Nobel laureates. And for instance, Santiago Ramón y Cajal, who was also a great artist and a great photographer. And in fact, his knowledge about photography helped him to discover neurons, okay? So virtually every great scientist has also been a reasonably good painter, sculptor, musician, poet, or novelist. This is just to mention the most recent polymaths, but we can extend this list backwards in time to include Kepler, Galileo, Pasteur, and many other scientists, okay? When we analyze hundreds of historical figures, we found that what we call genius surpasses the typical college graduate in both range of interest and range of ability. In fact, it has been shown by the end of the last century that there is a correlation between artistic interest and scientific success, okay? For instance, this is one of those papers who was published in 1995, okay? In this work, 40 male scientists, including 4 who eventually won Nobel Prizes, were interviewed 4 times between 1958 and 1978. This means along 20 years, concerning their work habits, use of time, hobbies, attitudes toward the artists and humanities, scientific attitudes, and related issues. Based on these results, based on these interviews, significant correlations were found. On the one hand, correlation between scientific success and particular modes of thinking, okay, especially visual ones. They also found correlations between success and various hobbies, especially artistic and musical ones. And finally, they also discovered correlations between success and having a broad range of avocations. This study concludes that successful scientists have highly integrated networks in their minds, whereas less successful colleagues tend to show less interest in non-scientific activities, and therefore they develop non-functional networks in which activities compete against rather than sustain each other. So it seems that complementarity between art and science is essential for success in any discipline, okay, in any of them, okay. In addition, artistic skills can inspire and boost scientific development. Henri Poincaré was convinced that creative thought required us to stop thinking consciously so that our unconscious mind could do its work. He even rejected logic and preciseness as tool of creativity and thought that logic is only useful to structure ideas, but not to develop them. Poincaré claimed that unconscious work was based on a kind of aesthetic preferences related to mathematical beauty, a kind of aesthetic instinct, we can call it, which makes it possible to choose the right option and rule out the rest of the options, okay? So let's see how art can help science, and let's see some examples, okay? We can start having a look about how painting helps ethology, okay? In this picture, we have Desmond Morris, is the guy on the right, okay? On the left, I don't know his or her name. Desmond Morris is an English zoologist, an ethologist, and he was also working in sociobiology. And probably you know his most famous book, who is The Naked Ape, okay? But he is also a surrealistic painter, and a good one, okay? This is one of his paintings, okay? And he says that his biomorphic shapes undergo the same evolutionary stages that real organisms do, okay? So his art becomes a kind of mental laboratory for exploring the nature of evolutionary processes, okay? He realizes explicitly that his paintings are very biomorphic, very related with biological shapes, and that his biological writings are largely concerned with visual patterns of behavior. In this sense, also Thomas Huxley claimed that accurate scientific observation was impossible without a facility for drawing, and argued that art classes should be required for all scientists. Okay, he considered absolutely necessary for everybody, for a longer or shorter period of time, to learn to draw, okay, to learn thinking spatially. One of the main ideas of the link between art and science is that, in fact, art masterpieces, this means painting, text, music, sculptures, and so on, contain a great amount of information which allows us studying and eventually understanding questions about the human behavior, psychology, or how the brain works. Okay, our masterpieces constitute an incredible laboratory for the neuroscience, and particularly literature can be a fruitful window to the mind. For instance, Shakespeare often used a kind of rhetorical device called functional shift, in which a known word is used with a new syntactic function. Okay, for instance, an adjective is used as a noun without altering the morphology of the original word. By using this kind of strange words in what seems a normal sentence, the brain is forced to pay special attention by generating a sudden burst of neural activity. This literary window to the mind has been explored by some neurolinguistic studies, like the one you can see here. And they have analyzed the effects on the brain of violating certain syntactic rules. These research works are based on recording brain activity, mainly by electroencephalography, that allows us to study the brain's response to certain stimuli and to understand a little bit better how we process the language and how mind works, okay? And all these things are possible because, as Roald Hoffman said, sometimes metaphors explain nature better than equations. The last example I would like to present to you today has to do with data representation. We all know that plotting the data help us somehow to understand better what's going on in an experiment, for instance. But however, this in some cases, this is not so easy, or this is not trivial, okay? And for this reason, some research centers like the Goddard Space Flight Center are hiring artists to help his engineers to develop new tools for data visualization. Okay, this is the case, for instance, for the data generated by satellites. In that case, there are a huge amount of data that needs to be visualized in a particular way. Okay, for the very same reason, the Bell laboratories are also hiring artists to do similar things, to look for new ways of plotting data, okay? The idea behind this is that the richest aspect of any large and complicated system arise from factors that cannot be measured easily, okay? And for these reasons, the artist approach seems to find and convey more meaning from the data. But even more interesting is the idea of playing the data instead of plotting them, playing the data, okay? So there are many universities and companies who are experimenting with transforming data into sound, okay? The idea behind this is that by playing the data is that the ear has powers of pattern recognition that extend far beyond the discriminatory abilities of the age. Okay, this is not my case, but for some people who has a well-trained ear, musical ear, this could work, okay? Therefore, the idea is that turning data into music rather into graphs or charts often aids the analysis, okay? Applications of this technique have included exploring the patterns within the human genome chemical analysis, complex physiological data, and many other cases. Okay, and this is a web application that I discovered recently, where you can either use examples data that they are on the web, or you can upload your own data, and you can generate different tracks with different instruments, and you can play your data, okay? And you can even make an orchestra, okay, with your data with many different instruments, okay? This is something that you can try. Okay, so just to summarize the talk, we can say that the arts often supply scientists with ways of looking at the world that complement purely logical and analytical modes. And this cross-fertilization is rather common, and the insights yielded by applying artistic methods to scientific problems is quite useful. Okay, in fact, an increasing number of researchers are suggesting that for exploring complex problems, artistic methods may even be better than scientific ones. We can say that today the division is not between art and science, but between explorers and non-explorers. Okay, you are an explorer or you are a non-explorer. Okay, and the context of your exploration is of secondary importance. Okay, it's supposed that curious people use all the tools that they can use. It doesn't matter if they belong to the science or to the arts. Okay. These examples try to illustrate that arts and science are two complementary ways of exploring the world. Okay, and as Poincaré said, it is by logic that we prove, but by intuition that we discover. Science provides us the former, whereas arts give us the latter. And please remember, science doesn't progress by becoming more rigorous, but by becoming more imaginative. So before ending this presentation, I would like to call your attention about two activities that we were and we are doing in the Mestizajes program here in San Sebastian at the Donostia International Physics Center. One of the activities is a creativium. Niklas mentioned something about this at the beginning. Creativium is a kind of a creative look at science and a scientific look at creativity. And it is a project based on three parts: a photo book, a photographic exhibition, and a web page. Okay, the web page, you have it here. Okay, you can check more information here if you are interested in this. And finally, I would like to make an announcement about a new meeting, a new international meeting. This is the 4th edition of our international meeting on literature and science that we are preparing by the end of November this year here in San Sebastian, where we are going to talk about beauty for a very different perspective. Okay, we are going to talk about beauty from science, art, and literature. We are going to invite scientists, artists, writers, philosophers, and you can, if you are interested, you can attend to the meeting, or you can also present your own work. Okay. Maybe in the next month, maybe March, at the beginning of March, you will have all the information about this event here in the web of Mestizajes. Okay, and that's all. Thank you very much for your attention, and I am open to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Gustavo. So now the questions turn will start. As we have explained you before, we encourage you to raise up your hand and pose your questions. Okay, so we have a first question of Inge. Inge, could you unmute yourself, please?
Yes.
Okay, we could hear you.
Show myself.
Thank you.
I had a question, like nowadays we have a lot of, well, we have the internet and all this technological revolution that we can find a lot of things. So how does this affect the creative process of doing original science and art? What do you think about this?
Well, I would say that creativity is just about connecting things, okay? And the more things you can connect, okay, the bigger your creativity, okay? And the more things you are able to find, in this case, by using internet, I mean, the more possibilities that you have. So I think that all these things collaborate in order to increase our creativity. I don't think that internet is decreasing or, let's say, yielding our creativity. I think that it can be a good boost for our creativity, okay? Because you have the possibility to connect things which are very far away, much farther than in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Inge, for your question. We have another one from Andreas. Andreas, could you unmute yourself?
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gustavo, for the very interesting talk. I found it interesting, and also I agree with most what you said. At the very beginning, so you stated that science kind of had a choice to not use mathematics as its primary or preeminent language. And while in principle, I think I agree with that statement, wouldn't science have lost out a lot in terms of achieved precision and so on, which of course isn't the creativity of science, but wouldn't we have a very different and kind of far less valuable type of science if we hadn't chosen mathematics?
You mean, if I understood correctly, what is the option if we don't?
Exactly. If we don't choose mathematics, what kind of science would we have today?
Yes, probably more descriptive one. Okay.
Right.
Maybe less precise, more focus on description. Okay.
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, let's say mathematics is the current paradigm for as a language for science. So it is very difficult to think out of the mathematical language. Okay. But for sure that this is not the only option. And from my point of view, we can we don't need to discard mathematics, but we can complement with other languages. Okay, for instance, in the case of art, probably in the case of paintings, for instance, probably the spatial language is the most important thing. Okay, or in music, the time is much more important than any other thing. So the idea is to look for a complementary approach between different languages. Okay, I think that mathematics is quite useful. Okay, it has shown to be very useful, very powerful, but it could be much powerful if we combine different languages coming from different way of seeing the world. Okay, I don't know if this answer your.
No, I think that's what that's basically what I mean. Yeah, if we had chosen a science world without mathematics, I don't think science would have the power it does. But on the other hand, yes, there may be things to discover for science without the use of mathematics. So I agree with that.
No, the point is that we have to complete. I mean, what cannot be described mathematically, we can complete using other languages. Okay, So in some cases, basically when you work with complicated problems, for instance, if you try to understand memory, emotions, consciousness, and this kind of very complicated problems, you can use maths, of course, but maybe you will be some way limited to explain only part of these complex problems. Okay, so you can complement the mathematical approach with some other approaches.
Okay, thank you.
Franz, please, next question.
Okay, I see we're running out of time. I'm gonna try to do it quick. Thank you very much for the talk. You were talking a lot about how art is helping science, and I was thinking about the other way around, how science is helping art. And two things that are coming to mind is, of course, technique and science helps in inventing new materials, new techniques for like painting or sculpturing. And also the other thing is that a scientific approach in, for example, practicing an instrument is very helpful when we're learning, for example, an instrument. Are there other things you can think of where a scientific approach or a scientific mindset is helping an artist or I don't know, a musician or something?
Well, no, of course, science can help and is helping arts in many different aspects. In fact, there are a couple of talks after this one, which are going to focus on what science can do for the arts. Okay, but I will say that the main contribution of both of arts and science to each other is the contributions that they make to what we call the collective imaginary. Okay, the idea is that I mean, science and arts are let's say are generating concepts that help to each other to think the world in a different way. Okay, so I think that is the, for me, from my point of view, the most important contribution, because it is a conceptual contribution. Okay, it is the collective imaginary is the I mean, you cannot think the world outside the imaginary of a given age. Okay, so for me, that is the most important contribution of art and science to the collective creativity. Okay, the rest of the things are also important, but they are in some way applications of these things. Okay, so from my point of view, I mean, what art and science are doing for each other and for the collective creativity is to increase the collective imaginary.
Okay, Franz. So thank you very much for your question. And now we will...
I actually have a last question, if we can slip it in quickly. You mentioned in the beginning that kind of science is limited by the language of math. Do you think, I mean, a few hundred years ago, we didn't have the math to describe quantum mechanics, and then we developed or discovered the math to do so. So do you think it will be possible to advance further in the knowledge of math to describe parts which are now only in the realm of arts, and then kind of like a process where we open up the realm of things that we can describe by science?
Yes, definitely. For instance, I mean, there is a clear example, I mean, the last decades, the complex networks, for instance, it's a mathematical tool which can help to understand many things. For instance, the language is now studied from the point of view of complex networks. Okay, and this was impossible, let's say 50 or 60 years ago. Okay, so of course there are I mean, we are generating new mathematical tools that help us to approach new problems or old problems that cannot be approached from a mathematical point of view. Okay, in that sense, this is an advance, okay? But the point is that in any case, even with these new tools, you are looking only at certain aspects of a complex problem, okay? And you are not approaching the whole problem, but only those aspects that can be described in a mathematical way, okay? So, of course, if you have more tools and better tools, you can understand more about that problem. But in any case, you are not going to understand the whole problem, okay? Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, Gustavo, for your talk and your participation. And thank you very much to all of your active participation in questions. And now we will move to our second speaker, and Simon Raffy, that Matthias will introduce. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone. So yeah, thank you, Gustavo and friends for the smooth transition. So now we're going to focus more on the well, how we can use scientific and technological tools for producing science. And on this aspect, Simon will give us a very nice example. So Simon Raffy is actually now a research engineer in the CNRS in France, and well, he obtained his PhD in physical chemistry of condensed matter in Bordeaux on the microfluidic synthesis of soft acoustic materials. So at the same time, making scientific studies and research, Simon kept working on the art side and could even combine both during his research stay in the bioart laboratory in Eindhoven. And well, Simon uses his scientific knowledge to create art masterpieces based a lot on the interaction of light with liquids, especially soaps, and also interaction of light with crystal. But he also uses epoxy for different sculptures. And well, he exposed various of his works in different museums around the world. And today, Simon will present his work on the bubble formation. Well, on bubble formation in different conditions to create colorful art pieces. So yeah, please, Simon, if you can share your
Thank you, Matthias, for the introduction. So I will put my screen. It's okay? Got
it's okay.
This one?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. So today I will introduce a part of my work, which is, like Matthias say, related between art and science. And I will focus on bubble. It's a project I start in 2016 in Netherlands at a bioart laboratory. And I'm still working on it. So for the beginning, I will talk about my process. I'm looking at nature all day, and I saw many things, and depending on what I choose to do with it, I can do different things. For example, if I try to understand and to interpret what I see, I will work on science. If I try to control it, I can do technology. And there is another part I really like. It's when I try to do demonstration and show things, it will be more about teaching and art. So today I will talk about bubble. So here, if you look at the edge, you could see a lot of colors. They are due to light reflection, and this is a physical phenomenon I'm using. So the first step is to get reflection homogeneous, so on a plane. So I trap my soap film in a frame. And the soap film you see here, it's 20 minutes have a 20-minute lifetime, and I just break it because this one can live for hours. It doesn't break anymore, it's going to solidify. due to the recipe. So you could see a lot of color on it, and it's due to the reflection, and it's flowing. You could see the color going down. It's due to gravity. So how it works? Bubble and soap film are thin film of water between two layers of surfactant, and they are generally they have generally a thickness of 100 of nanometers, and this thickness is near the visible wavelength. So they are interacting together. So what you see here, it's a double reflection. And when they are going out from the soap films, they are overlapping. And depending on the phase shift due to the travel inside the film, you could have constructive interference or destructive interference. So for each thickness, you will have a specific color with the wavelengths disappearing and wavelengths amplified. So it's creating a full panel of color. And after, this is a water film, so it's flowing with gravity. So the thickness is depending on that. And you could just follow the colors. So I have two kinds of setup to control the soap film. The first one is have a tank on the top. It's constantly refill. And it's like a waterfall inside the soap film, and it could go for several meters per second. It's very fast. And the second one, it's the one I showed you before, so it just trap in frame. And I will start to talk about the first one, this one. So here it's my bubble machine. So I start with a tank full of soapy water with a special height. This height gives me hydrostatic pressure to get a very controlled flow. And from the injector, there is two wires coming out to a second tank, and those wires are keep in tension with weight. And if I want to create a soap film, I just have to pull on the two gray wires, as you could see here. And this machine is very big. It's like practically 2 meters of film. I present it at the Dutch Design Week. So it's 6 days of presentation. It was a long performance. And it was very nice because with that, I can show practically all the basic stuff about hydrodynamic. Generally, it's related with very big equation, and everybody are very fear from them. But here it's more intuitive. So for example, here you could see a laminar flow. I can have also a transitional state and a turbulent one. So I can show basic things about flowing. I can do perturbation on the soap film. These things are really useful on aerodynamic. For example, they are putting the cross section of plane or things to see how it's flow in laminar fluid. And I can see the dynamic braking, because with a 2 meter soap film, there is a lot of tension, and it's released when the film is broken, and you could see the wire motion. But now I will talk about something more personal. It's about art feeding science. So I do this performance during a week, and I find something for physics during the performance. So I will back to pure physics to explain. So here it's the soap film. There are the two wires. What you could see is the velocity field inside the soap film. And on both sides of the film, the air is dragging by the flow. And especially with those soft film, which are going very fast, the air is compressed and it creates some oscillation on the surface. So this thing is very well known, but I've been more deep on it. So here, I just film it on the site with a high-speed camera. It's 1,000 frames per second, and I find the velocity of the wave of 3 meters per second. And I spend most of my week near the film, and I hear something, so I try to record it. So it's that thing. It's a acoustic spectrum, you could see. And with the distance, you could see a very strong decreasing of the amplitude of the signal. This is a signature of wave interference, a destructive interference. And it is why nobody have never heard it, because you have to be like at less than 6 centimeters to hear any sound. So this is an example of art feeding science. And generally, people are more talking about the opposites. It's why I show you that. After, I will talk about my other type of soap film. I'm using this one for a much more longer time, because it's more easy to manipulate. It flows slowly, so it's more easy to capture image and video with it. And I also made a lot of performing with it, playing with friends who are playing music. So it was sound and lighting, and the soap was like the soap film was like a dynamic painting, and it was flowing on the music. And I'm just going to show you 2 different effects I'm using to play soap. So I'm going back to the boundary condition. So before I show you, if you have a flow inside the film, you can drag air, and on the opposite sides, if you blow on the film, you can drag it too. So here it's a physical regulator explaining how to blow bubble. But if you turn the RJ, you can totally control how it's flow. It's not going to do bubble, but it's going to create motion inside the film. And with the color, you can see many things. So I'm going to show you a video of that. So here I blow to create a vortex. It's quite hard to control with the breath. And now, if you look at the image, you could see a lot of little dark dots, and I will show you what is it right now. So it's a phase separation inside the film. It's not very well known, because generally people see this kind of mill, which is very wide. It's the one with 100 of nanometer of thickness. And this thickness is controlled principally by the electrostatic repulsion. But there is another type of film, this one, which is very thin. It's like a few nanometer. And this one is controlled by the van der Waals attraction. So if I'm going to a few of science, here you could see in dark the combination of those 2 forces with steric repulsion. So at long distance, it's the electrostatic forces dominate everything, and you have this thickness. But there is after a potential barrier. You could have here a potential wheel between the van der Waals attraction and the steric repulsion, which creates a stable state for this type of film. And something very interesting is the potential barrier. It creates a very strong separation phase between both of them, because if I have this film, it can't go back to this one. So this is very interesting because if you take both of those films, you look at the surface density, they are very different, because for the same area on the subfilm, this one is much more heavier. So you can have creaming or sedimentation inside the film. And the other interesting aspect is this film can't interact with light because it's too thin for that. So there is no light interference. And it gives me a very strong optical contrast between both of those phases. And now I will ending the presentation with a video of this effect. So if you take high tension, you can see a lot of capillary effects happening everywhere. It's really related to phase separation. I don't know exactly how to call it. It's like bubble or drop inside the subfilm. So I would like to thank you for your attention, to thank the organizer for the invitation. And if you have some question, it will be a pleasure to answer.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you very much for your nice presentation. And as you have told, now we will start with the questions turn. So we encourage you to raise up your hands. Okay, we don't have any question yet, but we will wait a little bit.
So maybe I can start with the question. Perfect. So thank you, Simon. It was a very, very nice talk, and you show very well how we can combine your scientific knowledge to try to make some art pieces. Yeah, I had a kind of a curiosity when you were talking about the subfilm making a sound. Did you try to amplify it to like create another experience to the users for these sorts of installations?
I tried to start a crowdfunding project on that, but I didn't get the funds. But yeah, it's an idea. It was to create like a musical instrument or something like that with the bubble. Yeah. But the first step is to do a mapping of all the sound recordable, because it's a 2-meter subfilm, so there is different frequency at different height.
Okay, so you can have a soap orchestra.
Yeah, possible.
I think, yeah, we have another question from Nicholas.
We have one question of Nicholas. So, Nicholas, you could.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Simon, for the very nice talk. Very interesting. I was wondering, how much do you think it will affect the people if they see like this artistic effects related to science, to get into science, or what's the benefit for example, science communication from using art to explain science?
It's related to the first presentation. There is a question about the using of mathematics or other things to show science. And clearly here for educating, it's better to start with image and things you can easily understand than directly going to the big equation with a lot of things, because it's, I don't know if you see Navier-Stokes equation. It's not the more beautiful thing in, yeah, it's hard to handle. And this one is much more easy.
Thank you.
but it's just the first approach. After you need the Navier-Stokes.
Yes, but it's a nice way to get in. Thank you.
Okay, I have received one question through the chat of Beatriz Martin Garcia. Beatriz, if it's possible for you, I will appreciate if you could unmute your mic and pose it at the moment. Otherwise, I will read it for you. Thank you so much.
Done. Thanks for the talk. Just have a curiosity. How critical is the recipe of the soap-water mixture for your experiments?
The recipe are depending on the film. For the refill one, it's just soap dishes. It's like that. That and distillated water, it's enough. And if you want to do the static film, you have to add some stuff to modify the viscosity and to get some water retention for reducing the evaporation.
Okay, thanks. I was thinking something of that because we also were using glycerin for the bubbles on these things.
And the better it's glycerin and sugar.
Yeah.
Both of them together.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Beatriz. Okay, as we don't have any other question, we will finish this talk of Simon's talk here. Thank you very much, Simon, for your nice talk, and thank you for all the questions. And now we will start this break that will finish at 11:20. So see you back in 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay, so as it's 11:20, we will continue with our third talk, and Matthias will introduce to Aránzazu, our third speaker. Thank you. Thank you very much, Aránzazu, for your nice talk. We will continue with this PhD workshop with Diogo's talk, and that will introduce Inge, this new speaker. Thank you very much, Aránzazu. Inge, sorry, your microphone.
Yes. I'm here. Okay, so the next contribution will be of one of our own co-workers, Diogo. He did his PhD in Paris, working on two-dimensional electron gases in perovskite systems and perovskite metal systems. And now he's working in nanoGUNE for 2 years already on low-power spintronic devices for beyond CMOS applications. And last year, during the quarantine of the corona, he started a project wherein weather-controlled generative music, and I'm very excited to see the results of this project.
Okay, thanks a lot for the introduction. I'll share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, we can see perfectly.
Okay, so first of all, thanks Inge for the nice introduction. So today I will present you my some work that I did during the quarantine. This presentation will essentially be divided in 3 parts, as you see here. So in the first part, I will be briefly explaining what generative art is. So already on the left, you can see some of the cool stuff that generative artists normally can achieve. Then, as you may know, a lot of art and most of the things in our world right now are very focused on visuals. However, one of the reasons why I got really interested in generative art was the ability to use these generative systems to make sound or to make music. So on the second part of the talk, I will be talking a little bit about the generative music, and I will also show you some examples. And then lastly, I will present you my project, and if we have time, I will show you a quick demo. Okay, so we start with a big question: what is generative art? So to answer this, I will actually read you a quote from Alan Watts. So Alan Watts was a philosopher, And in the quote that I will show you, it was not technically talking about generative art, but it was more addressing the differences between the mechanical and the organic, or if you will, the differences between things that are man-made and things that are made by nature. So what he said is that things which are made, such as houses, furniture, and machines, are an assemblage of parts put together or shaped like sculpture from the outside inwards. But things which grow shape themselves from within outwards, they partition themselves, elaborating their own structure from the whole to the parts, from the simple to the complex. Okay, so you can kind of think that, for example, when you build a house or you write a computer program, you normally start with a bunch of different parts and you assemble them all together to form this kind of cohesive and final project. So this is what it means to go from outside inwards. However, if you think about nature, we can think, for example, of a plant that starts like a seed, so a small seed, something simple, and then at some point grows into a tree, so something very complex. So this is what it means to go from within outwards, so from simple to complex. So in the end, generative art actually lives exactly at the intersection between these two ideas, in the sense that we cannot say that generative art is purely a mechanical thing, like programming, for example, because a computer program normally is something very logical and very clean. But we can also not say that it's purely art, in the sense that art tends to be very emotional and very subjective. So in its very essence, generative art can be described as a discipline of taking strict, cold, and logical processes, okay? So something we can take from programming, and subverting them into creating illogical, unpredictable, and expressive results, okay? Something that can possibly be considered art. So here on the bottom, I'm showing you a visual work from Robert Hodgin. So here, what the artist essentially did was to build a system where he told the computer program to draw some spirals, and then he set some rules to what would happen when these spirals would interact. And then this was the output. So for all of the generative art that I will show you, essentially what the artist does is to build the system, set some rules, and then just launch the program. And in principle, and if the generative art is kind of interesting, the output will always be something unpredictable and surprising, even for the artist himself. Okay, so we move on to generative music, and probably you are already seeing where this is going. So generative music essentially is about making music by designing systems that make music. So one of the first experiments in this topic was performed by Steve Reich in the 60s. So what he did was essentially take two of these tape recorders, and basically he played the same small loop on both of them. But on the first one, he put the speed a little bit lower, and on the second one, he put the speed a little bit higher. And this is what he achieved. I hope that you can hear it. So maybe I can increase a little bit. So essentially, what you are hearing is all like both of the clips playing at the same time. But after a while, because the speeds are different, they will kind of dephase from each other. Okay, so you can hear that they are kind of becoming dephased. At some point, it will become completely out of phase. And then after a few minutes, they will kind of meet each other again at their initial position. Okay, so this, it's a very simple example, but I think it was one of the first experiments where basically you could build a system to create some music or some audio output that was much larger than the sum of its individual parts. Okay, so this was kind of conceptually, it was a very interesting experiment. Then I wanted to show you an example from Brian Eno. So Brian Eno is a musician, and he is also one of the pioneers of this generative music topic. And for this record that you see here called Music for Airports, he essentially took a lot of ideas from Steve Reich that I showed you before, and he basically recorded all of this album using this kind of systems. So what you see here is that what Brian Eno did was to basically set up a bunch of these tape recorders. He basically set up the speed of each of them to be different. And what it did was to associate a specific note to each of the tape recorders. So this was the result. So like Brianino put in an interview he gave a few years ago, the thing about pieces like this is that they are actually almost infinite in length. They simply don't reconfigure the same way again. This is music for free in a sense. The considerations that are important then become questions of how the system works, and most important of all, what you feed into the system. Okay, and this will be like two very important things for any generative music piece that I will be mentioning briefly in a couple of slides. Okay, so we can consider that for conventional music, the only thing you need is the musician that knows about music, and he basically sits down and he plays or he writes music. However, for generative music, you need a couple more things. So first, you need a system that is essentially designed by the creator, the artist. Then you need an input, something that you feed into the system. And then you need a set of rules so that the system can kind of take this input, interpret it in some way, and output a musical piece. Okay, so actually I started to become very interested in this topic at the beginning of the pandemic. So probably like many of you, around March or April last year, this is what my days looked like. So I remember that I was spending maybe, I don't know, 10 hours of my day just on my phone reading news and reading social media and completely bombarded with a bunch of stuff that I was learning. And at some point I was starting to feel this very weird state where I was kind of losing track of my own time. Actually this has happened before, but this time it was really, really intense in the sense that I was having a really hard time distinguishing between like mornings and afternoons. And I was waking up at night to do stuff because there was simply no obligations. So there was this weird discontinuum of the timeline. Actually, at some point, I found this very interesting article by Venkatesh Rao, where he essentially says that there's a state of mind that's been increasingly common for me lately, which I can only describe as a sense of being outdoors in time during inclement temporal weather. If your state of mind is normally like that of a particle, so you are here and now thinking about this, doing that, with some uncertainty around it all, being diffracted is feeling like a wave, like you're in multiple states at once, with those states interfering with each other in ways that create subjective dyschronia and timelexia. So this was exactly what I was kind of feeling, because we were, at least for me, I was trying to get like information and news from so many sources, like the whole day, that at some point I was losing track of my own timeline. And I thought this was kind of creepy, but also fascinating. And this was one of the motivations to develop this project. So the name of the project is LAGU, which stands for Local Ambience Generative Unit. And it can be described, as you can see here, as an endless audio generative system that allows the viewer to halt and synchronize himself back with the physical world. So my initial idea was to build a generative music system that the user could kind of experience in a way to synchronize himself back with his own timeline. Okay, so escaping all these net of news and social media and kind of come back to his own self-time, let's say. So like I said before, to make a generative system or a generative music system, you need these three things. So for the first one, the system, I thought I could just program I could just write some code and write a program. This could be fairly easy. Then for the input, I decided to choose the weather. So why did I choose the weather? There were three main reasons. The first one is that the weather is kind of endless. Okay, it just runs forever. And this was a feature that I wanted to have in the project, that once you launch the program, it would just run as long as you'd like. The second thing is that you have no control over it. So the weather like literally just happens, so you can't really do anything about it. I thought it would be cool that once the system starts, the user cannot interfere with it, can only experience it. And lastly, and one of the most important features is that the weather is very slow, in the sense that when you have changes in the weather, I mean, of course they can be fast, but normally the changes in the weather are extremely gradual and extremely slow. And this is also something that I wanted the program to have, so that basically the output music would also be something that would change very, very gradually, and it would take like a really long time to change. Okay, so I'll try to explain here how the project works. So essentially, my first idea was to have several different layers, like you see here on the, well, let's just put the pointer. I would have several different layers, like you see here. So each of the layers would have an instrument associated with it. So for example, layer 1 could be a guitar, layer 2 could be a saxophone, and so on. And then, as you see here on the right, each of the layers would have a bunch of notes that would be played, okay? So in this sense, you can see here layer 1, basically the notes would be playing in a loop over and over again. So this would happen, this would be something like, dun, 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 and it would just keep going on and on forever. So this would happen in the whole 4 layers at the same time. Then I had to find a way to make the system evolve in a sense. And so to achieve this, I did 2 things. The first thing was basically every time a note was being played, the volume of this note would decrease a little bit. So basically every time the note plays, the volume goes down, 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 down until it reaches 0. And when it reaches 0, a new note is introduced in this spot, okay? So this was a way to kind of circulate notes and removing notes as time passes. Then a second thing I did was that there was also sort of a master volume associated with each layer. So every time the layer loops, this master volume will go down. And when it reaches 0, a new instrument is added in the layer. So let's say if this was a guitar initially, after let's say 15 minutes, the volume would go to 0 and we would add a bass guitar, for example. So this would keep happening for all the system, for all the layers at the same time. Okay, so this was the project in May. Let's see if you can hear it. So here, as you can see, there's I only have 3 layers, and you can see that the white things are the notes being played. The red ones are new notes that are being introduced. And in this case, I had like the same instrument associated for the 3 of them. So this by itself could already kind of run forever because the rules were set, so the program just had to follow the rules. Now, for this first experiment, I was using a random number generator to add new notes. So there was actually no rules. It was just adding notes at random. So the next step would be to add the weather as the input. So to do this, I used the public API called Open Weather, which essentially allows you to make a request to the API. For example, here I'm requesting the weather in London, and the API will output the weather conditions in that particular location. So of course, the string that it would print would be much larger than this. But just as an example, you can see that I can obtain the rain, the forecast, which was rain, the temperature, which is in Kelvin for some reason, and the percentage of clouds that in this case were 90%, and so on. So you can get like anything you want about the weather in real time. So then, having the input, I had to set the rules. And this was actually one of the hardest parts of the project. And what I eventually realized is that the actual job of a generative artist is to find the sweet spot between order and chaos. And you can imagine that if you set too many rules and rules that are too strict, then the system becomes really boring really fast. And actually nothing surprising happens because the rules are just set so strictly that it just becomes boring after a while. But then you also don't want to leave the system too loose because then you can imagine that we can have a situation where we have 10 notes playing at the same time on top of each other. Everything becomes distorted and it's just a huge mess. So some of the rules that I've implemented, there's many rules, but I'm just showing you here a few examples. So for example, if it's raining, I would choose to play some heavier synths, for example, in a minor scale. If it's very windy, I would increase the BPM, so the speed at which the system was looping would increase. If it's nighttime, I would increase the probability of adding a silence. Okay, so let's say the whole composition was feeling a little bit lower in terms of volume, everything will be a bit more calm, and so on. There's many rules that I implemented, and then we can discuss after if you're curious. Okay, so this is what the project looked like in November, and actually it looks very similar to now. So at first, when you enter on the website, you are presented with this prompt. So you can basically pick a location of your choice. Okay, so you can kind of go anywhere. And then this is what it was sounding like. So here, what you can see on the right is that I'm getting the weather from San Sebastian. The BPMs are set depending on the wind speed. So in this case, it was 2.1 meters per second. The forecast was clear, so I was forcing a major scale. And then here you can see that this is basically a log of everything that is happening. So all the notes that are being added and removed from the system. Then another feature, of course, is that every 15 minutes the program refetches the weather conditions, so that basically the system keeps updating itself over time. So the user doesn't have to do anything; it just keeps updating. And in principle, you can leave it running for days, months, years, as much as you'd like. Okay, so is the project finished? I have absolutely no idea. This is actually very hard to answer because there's so many things that I would like to add to the project. But I think at some point you just have to stop and stop perfecting it. So at this point, you can actually visit here on my website to experience the project. I will also leave the links in the last slide, so you can have a look. Then I also had some initial prospects for this project in the beginning. So one of the ideas was actually to have 4 different layers that had some visuals, and each of the layers will be connected to the audio layers, so that visuals were being produced in real time as the audio was being produced in real time. And the final idea would actually be for some sort of exhibition, where you could have a room where each of these layers would be projected into one of the 4 walls. And essentially, we would go for something like a full immersion. So a person would enter in this space and could indirectly experience the weather just by listening and looking at what was happening around. So yeah, I thought this was kind of a cool idea. And that's it. So like I said, this is still a work in progress. It's close to being finished, but you can already have a look if you want. If you are curious about the code, I upload the code very regularly to GitHub, so you can also have a look. And it's not like I tweet a lot, but if you want to say hi, I'm also on Twitter. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much, Diego. Now we will start with the questions turn. So we encourage you to raise up your hands. At the moment, okay.
Nerea, you have a question?
Hi, yes, I have a question. Thank you for a very nice talk. Diogo, would you describe yourself as a musician? And if not, why not?
Not at all. I mean, I have absolutely no formation in music or anything related. I did watch a lot of YouTube videos about like music theory and stuff like that. So it's just a topic that I find very interesting. So, but no, I'm not a musician at all. Actually, at some point, I thought it would be interesting to collaborate with an actual musician, because all of the rules that I implemented were actually quite basic, and I didn't go too adventurous on the music theory side, because again, I didn't want the thing to sound too weird. So finding this balance was a bit difficult, but I decided to be a bit conservative, let's say. So making very simple rules that would still give a very interesting output. So yeah, not a musician.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question from Francesco. Francesco, are you there?
That headphones doesn't have microphones. Now you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Diogo, and really nice presentation. I like a lot the project. We already spoke about it, obviously, you know, but something that I didn't ask you, or maybe you were not at that point, is when I imagine that while you were trying the rules that you were implementing to the program, you were obtaining different outputs, no? There was ever a moment in which you knew that there were too many rules and a moment in which there were too little because you were getting these effects that you were explaining, or you didn't go too far with the rules?
Yeah, okay, thanks for the question. Actually, at the beginning, it was very easy to go very close to chaos. So at the beginning, I didn't really put much rules in the beginning. So I had a lot of like very bad sounds, like really weird stuff and notes that clearly didn't match with each other, playing on top of each other. And this was a huge mess. So yeah, the way I would say that it happened is that everything was very chaotic at the beginning. Then I started putting more and more rules. And then at some point things became actually a little bit boring. So in the end, I ended up adding a bit more instruments. I basically loosened up a bit the rules. And of course, I mean, it would still suck a little bit that I would like play the system and the first thing I hear was like horrible.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I mean, I would say that that's a bit part of the thing. So sometimes you listen to very beautiful things and sometimes it's just strange and ugly. But yeah, it's just part of the process,
okay.
I would say. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so it's a bit trial and error, and it depends a little bit on also time of playing. And there is still a random generator thingy below.
Yeah,
or it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
taking
So
it's not only taking the weather, right?
actually, I had one open here. Let me see. So if this is not too loud. So yeah, I mean, for example, when a note is introduced, it still picks it at random, but it picks it from a specific
box of rules,
matrix, let's say, that it's chosen depending on the weather.
Okay.
So for example, I mean, some of the things I did was that I think if the temperature is like above 20 degrees, I wanted to make sort of a happier mood. So one thing I did is that when a note is added, it looks at the previous note and tries to put a note that is a bit higher in frequency. Okay, so then you kind of create this ascending feeling to make the whole composition sound a little bit happier. So in a sense, it's random, but it's not totally random. So this is where the rules come in, actually.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I think we will go to the last question of Mikel.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much, Diogo. I really like your work. And you mentioned Brian Eno, but do you have any other inspirations or something like that? Because what I hear right now really kind of reminds me of the works of Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor. I don't know if you know them.
Yeah. So I mean, I think one of my main inspirations was the example I showed you from Brian Eno, like a huge Brian Eno fan, and I've been listening to a lot of his interviews, for example, and I think right now you don't have like this topic is not huge. You have some people working on it, but it's not like a super mainstream thing. But there are definitely a lot of artists, and mostly actually not musicians, but more just people that are like to play with the system making, let's say. So yeah, so all of these people have been a huge inspiration. I mean, actually, I had a bunch of examples I wanted to show you, but I will not have time. But you have projects, for example, of one guy that put a camera on his backyard to see the stars in the sky. And depending on the configuration of the stars, different notes would be played and a different music would also be produced. There's another one that basically tracks the updates on Wikipedia pages. So every time a Wikipedia page is updated, there's a note being played, and you can kind of see like all the pages being updated in real time, and it's like a huge symphony of things playing. So I think it's a really, really interesting field. And I would say that there's more like programmers working on it than actual musicians. But I think, yeah, a lot of musicians are now starting to be interested in these, making these systems to make music, let's say.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Okay, thank you very much for your talk, Diogo, and thank you very much to you all for your nice questions. And now we will go for our second break, as we have passed the usual break time. The break will be moved until in 12:45 minutes. So see you in 5 minutes.
Okay, Ibai, if you want, maybe we can ask Ushu to already, so that you already will be able to share your screen.
Okay.
Okay.
You can hear me?
Yes, I will do now.
Thank you.
The screen sharing is not available?
Yes,
no?
I will do it now
Okay.
for you. One moment. Here you go.
Okay, this is it. Yes.
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you so much.
And I can, okay. Where are you now? Okay, I can see myself, but there is no problem with that.
And we can also hear you, so
Okay.
yes.
But you can see me. Yes.
And I
Okay.
can see you as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm seeing you now, so.
Okay. Hi.
So, in 5 minutes.
Yeah, we ran a little
Yes.
bit behind, so.
In 4 minutes, we will start again back. Okay, it's the time. I hope you enjoyed this very short break. And now we will start with the fifth speaker of this PhD workshop, and Inge will introduce him. Thank you very much.
Thank you for accepting the invitation to speak here, Ibai. Ibai is a coordinator of experimentation and research projects in the Medialabs in the Tabakalera. He's working in the Hikiri labs that started in 2003, and it's a digital culture and technology citizens lab for citizens. And last year he told me that it's fused with another type of lab that is called the UBIC lab, and to the creation library of the Tabakalera. And he will tell us today why he thinks it's very important to have this type of laboratories and why he thinks that we should communicate with one another from the science perspective and the art perspective. So go ahead, Ibai.
Thank you. So I am Ibai. As Inge said, I'm the coordinator of the creation and research projects here in Tabakalera. Well, not here because I'm at home now, but in Tabakalera. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank nanoGUNE, especially Inge and Diogo, for this invitation, because it has been like a surprise for me to be here with you people from nanoGUNE, and it will be a pleasure to explain you a little bit the Tabakalera Medialab project and what citizen labs can do, in my opinion. I will not like to turn this little talk into an advertisement or a promotion, but I would like to introduce you to what we do in particular. So we will use our own experience and our own project because we are currently starting to collaborate actively with scientific and technological institutions, and you are obviously a reference in this field. So I think that this is a good moment for us to let you know what Medialab in Tabakalera is and what Tabakalera is. So I will try to explain it in this way. We always like to listen to ideas or proposals and meet people interested in doing new things. We are like makers, so this talk is also an invitation to future collaborations, or if you want to visit us here in our space in Tabakalera in San Sebastian, we are open, so you can come and visit us or write me, and we will be very pleased to have you. As you can see, my English is not very good, it's a little rusty, but I will try to express myself because I tend to speak like very fast, and it won't be so easy for me today. I think that Diogo's presentation was perfect today to introduce our field. In the end, Medialab is like a place where projects like Diogo's should have a place, and it's a space to be able to realize them and show them to the public. So this is one of our missions, and I think that it's well linked. His project and our project is linked, and it makes very sense to be after him. He made a lot of work with code, data, environmental data, but also he has like an artistic vision, and he has also a researcher like all of you, I think, and he has a lot of other kind of experience. So he's one of this kind of examples that we like to share: a citizen making art, or a scientific making art, or an artist making science. Maybe this kind of mixtures are our space. I don't know if you know, but Tabakalera is a large contemporary culture center in the center of San Sebastian. It's an old tobacco factory rebuilt in 2015, but the project started like in 2006 or 7, I don't know. And it's a very central facility composed with a lot of different kind of projects. We in Tabakalera, we are the main project, the public project funded by the government, the council, and Diputación. And we manage the building, and we have like a third part of the building is ours, and we share it with another kind of institutions like Bank or like the Cinema al Día, the San Sebastian Film Festival, and another kind of institution. So it's a very large space in the center of the city dedicated to contemporary culture. And in our case, the project deals with subjects very different, like art and cinema, contemporary art and cinema, the education, the digital culture in our case in Medialab, and we focus on the relationship between the creation and citizens. We try to make like this bridge between all the citizenship and the creators, and this is one of our main goals, especially in the Medialab. In July, like Inge was saying, in July we presented the Medialab. Medialab is a new project because it's the fusion between the creation library, known before as UBIC, and the Citizens Laboratory, known before as Eriki Labs. With this new project, we have created a large space of 2,600 square meters open to public, which, in addition to being the first point of access to knowledge for citizens in Tabakalera, is also the first point of access to the creation or the creation tools. We try to focus especially in the collaborative creation, in the creation in groups or with more people. We try to do it with social impact and focusing especially in arts, technology, and science. UBIC was not a very common library. It's an open, diaphanous, and very very accessible space where we encourage people to work in groups, to understand that there must be noise. There's not a silent library. And there are a lot of families playing, and we offer different types of creative tools to citizens, from cameras on loan to musical instruments or space like a television set and things like that. And in the other hand, Eriki Labs, where it was my project, but Eriki Labs was the citizen laboratory, has been working for years to create a space equipped with tools where citizens and groups are autonomous and co-responsible for this space. So we started the project in 2013 in the oil fire department headquarters in the kitchen, in a 50 square meters kitchen. We set up the lab together with a group of citizens who were interested in this kind of open practices and maker practices, and they helped us to make everything, even sweeping or designing the furniture. This was the first furniture from the space. This collaborative experience, I think that it's important to understand what kind of laboratory we are. This first lab in 2013 was like a beta lab, and it was definitely settled in Tabakalera building in 2015. And as I said at the beginning, we are a public project, but we have been able to do this because of the people and because of his work. So it's important to understand. The new space in Tabakalera was amazing and beautiful and much better equipped. So we are very grateful in this sense too. And this is the space for of the library, the UBIC, like instruments and a lot of things. And now we, in the little laboratory, we have moved to the same space with the library, and we are now in Medialab. So this this is an art installation and the space. So we think that we are in a space open to experimentation with, yes, digital fabrication technologies as in the Fab Labs, but also we try to foster the relationship between areas who works in coexistence, inclusivity, or education. We focus a lot on education in Tabakalera, but also in Medialab now. And we try to do it in a very collaborative way. In addition to the services and programs of the Medialab, we are now promoting a new line of work with artists, which are developed in the lab itself, in the lab you see before, this lab. And we work with artists in full view of visitors, open to the public. So artists will be working here in this space, and maybe they are collaborating with another kind of institution or another kind of professionals. The objective of these new art projects or residencies is to confront from the creation, so from the culture, issues of social relevance in a very wide sense, maybe in environmental things or maybe other kind of critical things. So we try to focus in social issues and work it with artists and other collectives. For this work, we work with local and international curators. We had 3 residencies this past year, and we are expecting another 3 or 4 in the forthcoming year, in 2021. We work with the local and international artists, but we try to work with them and also with our communities. We have a lot of communities here inside the Medialab, and depending on the projects, also professionals from other fields, such as designers or scientists like you. So it's important to know what kind of researchers and scientists they are working in San Sebastian for us. The projects we work, yeah, as I said before, are projects from very linked to social innovation, the artistic creation, art, science, technology, and also mediation or education. As I said, Medialab also includes the work we made in IRIC Labs, and in IRIC Labs was very important to work with communities, articulated around what we call the open work groups, lantalde irekiak. The open groups are collectives of citizens who work in a self-organized way on very specific topics, and they have like a space to experiment things like citizen science, arts and experimentation, design and digital fabrication, education too, and everything related to the data processing, data visualization, and forms of digital governance. And we have like different communities. They are not very big, maybe groups of 3, 4, sometimes 12 or 15 people, and they come every week or every day maybe to the lab, and we have like a very close relation with them. So we try to hear what they need, and we try to give them like some kind of resources. So we can highlight groups like the Astronomy Citizen Group led by the Aránzazu Science Society, the Data Commons Lab Group, we have a 3D fabrication group, textile experimentation, or we have a very active cinema and technology group. They work a lot in things like old technologies, the old cinema technology digitalized, or things like that. The main thing in this case is to focus on the social and collaborative technologies, to extend or to foster a critical view, and try to pass from the do-it-yourself, very common in this kind of fab labs and laboratories, trying to pass from do-it-yourself alone to do it with others. It's important for us to share different point of views, different experiences, and we think that almost everyone has something to learn and something to teach. So this is our main scheme. We have a public program with activities, workshops, talks, always open to the public, always free, and always in the Tabakalera's website. So or in our Tabakalera Medialab Instagram, or another kind of media. We work with the open groups, the work groups. We have like very specific projects. These projects are like the residence and art projects, but also we have an open call for projects for every citizen, where you can come with an idea. We try to help this idea with our means, with the tools and sometimes money too, with only two conditions: to open the process, try to share this process with other people, and the second condition is to try to do it in group. If you know to code, and I know something about, I don't know, digital fabrication, we try to make collective projects to develop this kind of open call projects. And we have like a very active school visits and projects too, to work on STEM culture and these kind of things. I was saying, but our work with citizen groups is to listen and try to provide the means to develop ideas, and we try to do it developing specific projects, obviously. So we try to activate programs. Everything is linked. We try to activate programs or activities such as workshops, meetings, or lectures. If a work group asks for us to do it, or if we want to work in a specific subject. So the goal of the Citizen Lab, in my point of view, is to make these communities self-organized, autonomous, and free, if that's possible. So they can start or leave the project when they want. They are not forced to work, obviously. And they can come and go at any time, or they can appear and disappear from Medialab when they want, obviously, too. So they have this freedom to do it or not. And we try to create a pedagogy of collaboration between people and between groups too, and with the institutions. We are a public institution where we try to be very collaborative in this sense, and we try to hear and not to offer only a service. But the service is here, obviously. So those are the groups and everything, but I think that example of groups. This is 0 was a project with families with kids from 0 to 6 years, and the families designed a space for leisure and education, but they not only think and design the space, they do it. They made it physically. So it was a very interesting project, and now it's closed for the COVID, and I don't know. Well, maybe it's not going to come back as it was, but maybe we are doing another kind of project. HOLABS is the workshops and everything for kids, focusing on STEAM and the logics of experimentation as laboratories, and we try to work with kids and youngsters, the art, technology, and society things. Cacharraroac is another group formed for elder or elder people, but they do a lot of things. They are like factory. They love to do things like those. Precious Plastic is a project, international project to recycle plastics, and they made these machines, and we have another one, and they are recycling every kind of plastics. We have a textile experimentation group too. This another project is very interesting because Euskal Herria Aerospace is a project formed by very young people. They started when they were like 16. Now they have like 20 or 21 years, and they are trying to reach the space with these rockets. They started with a very little rocket, but now they are doing everything. They have like telemetry, they have very complex designs, and they are doing a very, very good work. And they started like kids. Now they are studying, they are in the university, and it's a very cool project. We have an open furniture design group too, the Data Commons Lab, and these kind of things. Since last July, we have also incorporated artists, and I think that I will present you a couple of examples that we did with the artists, because we in Tabakalera we are a production center, and we already work with residences from the beginning, but not in the Medialab. So we understood that there was an opportunity to strengthen two things. In one hand, the development of projects that connect art, technology, science, and society. This was an aspect that did not have its own space in Tabakalera, and I think that nowadays is important to work in these things in the world that we are living. And in addition, it allows us to work in connection with institutions and the science and technology sector to make practices more accessible to them and to the public too, and to develop like speculative and educative context. Maybe sometimes it's not easy to translate the technology or the science world to the public. So we try to do this with these new residences, So we find interesting to create like a space to think in what if. Imagine from the science or technology on art possible futures or creative solutions or social and environmental problems, and try to work on that kind of things, like hypothesis, or start to working in this what if question to develop new projects. So in the other hand, it's an opportunity to test for us a methodology in Other Citizens Lab too. This kind of residences is because we try to foster an open and collaborative work, and we try to do it in front of the citizen size and in collaboration with them. So it's important to work in this aspect from science, technology, arts, and do it with this what if aspect, but it's important too how we do it. So we try to do it in a very open way, like in the software or hardware, free and open software and hardware worlds. We try to do it in a public, very public sense. So, because we know another thing, that sometimes the artistic work can be very close or cryptic to the main public, and many people understand that art doesn't nothing to do with them. So we are trying to.
Can I ask you to try to finish so we have some time for a few questions? And...
Okay. So we are trying to. Yeah. I think that. Oh. And I will show you a couple of projects, the 2 projects we made this year. The first one is this, Supraspectives. Is an artistic installation with a Quadrature artist from Berlin in collaboration with Ars Electronica, Donostia International Physics Center, and the Citizens Astronomy Group in Tabakalera, in Medialab. The installation was started to like a dialogue between the artist and the astrophysics, no astronomers, astrophysics, and also the astronomers in the astronomy group. And they wanted to show the abandoned military satellites over our location. They build an antenna to hear these satellites and introduce the sound signal into the installation. The installation was consists in a 12-meter screen, and like you see here. And in addition to these beautiful like images or suggested images, the installation was introduced into the military satellites information, and we selected like 500 satellites that pass around us or over us. So it was a very interesting project to work in collaboration. And the other project was called Mecánicas Forzadas, Forced Mechanics, and was made by 2 artists from Bilbao, Tuni Panea and Ollane Irauen, in collaboration with B2 from Rotterdam and the Summer Sessions. And it was a video played with by little robots. I don't know if it's here. Yeah.
A la cual entendíamos varios módulos el instrumento que yo he fabricado. Es una instalación
que estará disponible en principio desde el mes de noviembre en Tabakalera y que la intención es que...
So those kind of projects, we are starting 3 new residences this year, one with Techniker, another one with Ars Electronica and the Basque Culinary Center, and I will recommend you to visit us. We would love to know more about nanoGUNE and all of you. So I hope that we can see each other in the future. And sorry for my long explanation.
It doesn't matter. You're very enthusiastic, and it's good. And so if we go to the Tabakalera, where can we find you, for example, if we want to speak?
Basically, we are in the 2nd floor inside we are the old library, now the Medialab. So near the elevators is the Medialab. Open from Tuesday to Sundays, 10 o'clock to 8 o'clock.
Okay. Okay. As we are running a little bit out of time, I don't know if we have, or maybe we don't have time for questions.
Yes, what we were suggesting is to refer questions directly to you, Ibai. You could provide us your email or your how to contact, and like this, the questions could be directed.
It was in my last
slide. Okay.
So maybe also put it in the chat to everyone, so people can copy it.
Nice.
And they can ask you questions. And yes, please go to the Tabakalera and find out what you can do in their media labs.
We hope that Diogo will come.
Okay, thank you so much, Ibai.
Thank you.
So now we will do a last minute change on our plan of the PhD workshop, and we will do first our last speaker talk, Joris, and then once his talk is finished, we will continue with the last step, that will be the photo contest exhibition of the prizes of them. So thank you, Joris, and now Inge will introduce you.
Thanks again for the invitation. Greetings to Spain, and stay healthy, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Okay, now we have come to the last point of the PhD workshop, and we will start with the photo contest and exhibition, and of course the prizes too. So,
yeah, thank you. While Stefan is sharing his screen, I wanna explain quickly how it come that we at the end of our PhD workshop this year have a photo contest. And I think it's pretty obvious that the topic of how art and science is connected is not just a topic that we can explore with old pictures or with projects that we do in our free time, as for example Diogo showed, but that actually happens in all of our lives, especially the PhD students that spend a lot of time in the lab and do science, and maybe sometimes even found a connection to art. And that's why we wanted to include this photo contest, so that everybody in nanoGUNE can actually on a small scale think about this connection. And maybe after a while, this leads to some interest, that leads to some projects that we, for example, can realize in nanoGUNE, or as we've seen even in San Sebastian, in cooperation with the Tabakalera or other institutions. And what started as this little idea actually led to really nice contributions, and we are, as the organizers, are really happy how many people went into their Sunnet folders and checked their old SEM images, or had like some ideas that they wanted to show everybody for quite some time now. And we have a lot of really good contributions. And I think, Stefan, you prepared some numbers on how many people actually contributed and submitted something, or?
Yeah, exactly. I hope you can see the screen that I'm sharing right now.
Yes.
Yes, we can see.
So I will go on just showing a quick summary. So as you correctly introduced, we asked you to submit your contributions, and in the end, we ended up with actually 37. To my opinion, super nice images sent in by 20 persons from 7 different groups of nanoGUNE. So I think this was kind of a success. And since Monday, you were all allowed to leave a vote. And in the end, we ended up with 225 votes of 75 participants who were all, I think, like fully exploiting the rules that we set to the voting process. And yeah, now we came up with this voting result that we are about to share with you. But before we actually define the winner, let's all together enjoy the nice, magnificent work that has been handed in, and we're showing here. And
I think the nice thing is actually that there's so many different contributions here, and I think everybody has maybe for some reason or another like a private favorite. I actually already used one of the contributions for my phone background because I liked it really much when I did the vote. And I think it's important to see that, of course, this vote is a bit subjective, but I'm also very interested to see how at the end had the most votes. So Stefan, I think there's a little animation that
we are ready to start the voting process. So everybody pick your favorite and let's see how far your favorite gets in the voting process. As we see slowly disappearing the ones that didn't get enough vote to enter the final of the competition. So I hope everybody is getting more and more excited. And
I didn't prepare the drum roll. It's really a shame.
Yeah, we should have, but maybe we can ask the weather to excite a bit. So the voting has completed and we end up with 3 contributions in the final. And before actually revealing the winner of those 3 contributions, we wanted to give actually faces to those contributions. So we have actually 2 contributions here in the final from the electron microscopy group with Bente and Evgeny, and the last picture on the bottom from nanomaterials group sent in by Oksana. And now we start the final race to see who actually won the 2021 competition of the best photo at nanoGUNE. And it's Oksana. So with this, Franz, I give back the word to you.
Yeah,
and with the news.
That was a very professional presentation. It was only missing the little envelope, and I think Oksana is actually in the Zoom call right now and can activate her video and can actually say hi. And like in all professional award shows, Oksana, is there anybody you have to thank for your contributions? I don't know, a technician, a supervisor, your parents. Who do you want to say thank you to? I think we don't hear you yet. No, we don't have a microphone audio yet. Or Stefan, you can. Yeah, now.
Maybe
we
you
hear
the headphones.
I can talk.
Great. Now it works.
Okay, now it works. Okay.
Yeah, is there anybody that contributed to this photo, or did you do all this work by yourself?
Yeah, I think I should start it with my parents, then I should go to my grandparents, like start it really from the beginning. This is really big achievement. But yeah, of course, I did this image by myself, but it's a part of my PhD work. So it's basically it's a sample which I did specifically for some scientific results, and so then my supervisor, my project, my funding, everything.
Okay, we will make sure that when we print the image that we will include this all. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about what we actually see on the picture. In the description, you said that those are zinc oxide nanostars and nanoflowers, as you called them. and maybe you can explain a little bit how they form.
Okay, I hope I heard you everything. Well, it's basically it's a cross section of a sample. So there is a hole in the surface of my sample, and I'm working on producing a hybrid which would combine properties of polymers and also inorganics. And so I have a mixture of a polymer with zinc oxide. And then I now currently working on interesting topic of self-healing, and with FIB I did this cut, so I kind of damage my sample in a controllable way, and then these flowers grew kind of self-healing, this rupture I produced, because they grew exactly this pink flowers, they grew exactly on the line where was this hybrid zone, hybrid material. And then the nanostars is just I don't know, by accident. I don't know why they're here yet, but yes.
Okay, so it's actually, there is still ongoing research
Yes.
why there are flowers and stars. Yeah, but that's nice, because it actually builds a little bit of a bridge to the other talks we saw, where art sometimes means that we do something, that we give a system an impulse, in this case damage the surface, and then on its own, without that we can really influence it, something is created. But the colors you gave yourself in the picture, or how do they come? If I remember correctly, my SEM images are always black and white.
Yeah, it's still electron microscopy image, so it's black and white, but then I painted them manually in Photoshop. So if you have a very long, boring evening, then you can start making these lines, coloring your images. And yeah, in principle, it's not the first image I colored up. I think I like to show some of my images to my friends who ask, like, what are you doing? And then, of course, it's more interesting to color up a bit these black and white images. But of course, all the colors are artificial, and I guess zinc oxide is not pink.
Okay, but that answers also my next question. If you already have like multiple samples of this, or if this is what you saw for the first time, and then you decided, oh, I have to show that to somebody that actually isn't just interesting, but it's actually also beautiful.
So yeah, I in principle, I have always come up with some nice, funny, nice from my point of view images, but they typically are some artifacts or side effects in my work. And yes, I even uploaded some of them in my Instagram, sharing with other people, so you can have a look and see some extra images if you want. But yes, I kind of do it from time to time.
Okay, that's great. Maybe you can put the Instagram link in the chat so everybody can have a look. And yeah, maybe that is.
But don't share them all. There will be a next year's competition, maybe. So don't review all your top pictures.
Just about to say, don't spoil your chances. Yeah, if any of the listener has a question that he wants to ask Oksana, now would be the time. Or else I would have another questions. Did you ever already think about where you want to put your picture? Because the first prize for this photo contest is actually that this will be printed in a big format. Do you have any wishes where in nanoGUNE we should present your work, where you can see it yourself every day, or maybe where you cannot see it yourself?
Oh, I'm not sure there is an. Can you repeat it, but in a shorter way?
The question was, do you have any location in mind where you want to see your artwork?
Location. Well, I think the biggest wall in nanoGUNE, we should find it. And then, yeah, the biggest wall should be good enough.
Okay, we will have a look. I don't see any questions in any raised hands. So with that, I would say thank you again, Oksana, for your contribution, and thank everybody for the contribution of the photo contest, and of course also thank you for everybody who voted. And I hope maybe in the next year we can have something similar again. because we, like I said, we were really liking all the results that we saw. And with that, I can give back to Inge. No, not to Inge. She's shaking her head. Matt.
Now,
no, it's my turn now.
Mayara will.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, can you see me? Yes, no?
Yes, I can see.
Okay, no, it's just to say that we are coming up to the end of the PhD workshop of this year. Remember that this was organized in the framework of the 12th anniversary of nanoGUNE. We are really happy about your being you with us, and that you have been the whole morning asking questions, being really into the talks, and well, hope you see you again next year, no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you
now you can go and have a good lunch.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joel.
Thank you, Joshua, for putting everything
Yes,
in line as well.
A special recognition to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to everybody.